welcome. I'm Van Stillen, and we're in Paradise Sound Studio in beautiful downtown Paradise. And I'm with Caleb Miles. And this is he's the first guest on a cool little series I started to do called Off the Record, where we take one of their tunes, this one being from Dayliner's latest album. Buy it, get it, it sounds pretty cool. We're going to tear No Such Thing, which is it like the single off the record? Is it even the first one?
It's the first song.
It's the first song.
So that's the one everybody listens to.
Yeah.
And then, so they hear it and then they take
And they're like, oh, I made a mistake.
So
And
that's
they take it out. No.
the single song I listen to.
Cool.
Oh, I guess I should be talking into the mic.
Oh, that's all right.
There you go.
We can fix it up in Pro Tools later, if I use Pro Tools. What did you use for recording?
What we did is we tracked on my Korg D16XD, which is, I've had that now for close to 15 years.
Wow.
I bought that right before I moved to Nova Scotia in 2005, and the reason I bought it was because at the time at my job I had computer screens. I had two computers and all this, and actually my hand was getting kind of messed up with the mouse, doing mousy stuff.
Yep.
So I didn't want to get into mouse.
Wanted to get back to mixing.
Well, or stay with it actually. So the Korg has, faders and pan pots. It looks like a mixer pretty much. And up to that point, I'd only ever used 4-track, reel-to-reel.
Cool.
And for a while, I had a 4-track, one of those mini disc.
Oh,
like
yeah,
the
those are
Tascam
cool.
mini disc
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
Which, you can bounce
Yeah,
and
exactly.
get like 10, 12 tracks if you're
Those are cool.
adventurous. And I got that, and over the years got pretty good at using it, and then just recently went into DAW land.
Digital recording, computers.
And I got actually I started with Logic Pro, and it just I didn't interface well with it. It's like a 1,000-page manual.
I just want to
Fuck
record
this,
my vocal.
And it was frustrating. So I ended up with this Harrison mix bus, which I think is designed by old guys for old guys, because it on the screen it looks just like a mixer with the faders and the knobs.
Harrison's an old company, and they make giant, and they still make beautiful mixers.
Yeah.
So cool. So it made sense to you.
It did. It made sense, and the manual, which I didn't even need to refer to that much, but it uses the same terminology as tape decks. Fast forward, rewind, cue.
Yeah.
And so I was able to, and I actually sent them an email after I'd used it for a while, and I told them, that I'd really had just a hard time with the terminology of Logic Pro. Because I could be wrong, but it seems like Logic Pro kind of comes out of the GarageBand thing, and it's recording for people who don't record. It's like people with computers who want to do recording, right? And so they've invented, it's like Starbucks. When you go into Starbucks and you have Venti and Frappuccino
presets
and all this
everywhere
stuff. It's its own language, its own terminology that you have to learn. And I was reluctant to do that. So it took me So I actually learned more.
How long ago was that you started to dive into the DAW?
2016.
Here. Now, see, this is old school that a lot of people don't do anymore. Actual track sheets, so you can see. Because back in the day, you couldn't look on your computer and label stuff. You had to write things with this weird thing.
And this is the tracking that I did for the Korg.
And this is the track sheet.
And the reason I still track on the Korg is because with Harrison, I'm using the Apollo. What do they call those? The Duo. Apollo UAD interface, and it only has 2 inputs.
Okay.
The Korg gives me 8.
Yeah.
So I essentially these first 8 that you're looking at is what we tracked live.
Cool.
And then the next 8
all
are overdubs. And then once we tracked that, I threw it up onto the DAW onto Harrison Mix Bus and proceeded to mix. And it was really the first project that I'd done on Mix Bus. And so, like I was saying earlier, like the first 3 songs, it was just like I was just maxing it out with plugins. It was like, oh, this sounds great. Wow,
this is amazing.
And after the first 3 songs of like trying to fix the,
what was some of your favorites?
Overindulgence.
What were some of your favorite plugins that you were using for the record?
The ones that I really like, I mean, all different companies, but the ones that I like are these old school, the ones that I gravitate to are ones that I recognize from reading about the Beatles and EMI Studios. So all your Fairchilds and the Pultecs and the,
APIs and all that stuff.
I don't have any APIs, but I do have I think Waves has that TG mastering desk.
Oh, yeah. The whole Abbey Road collection is really sick.
Yeah, all the Teletronics.
We used it. I just used it for a little bit of their plate reverb for most of Jeff's stuff, and a little tiny delay. But if there was any reverb per se, it was a plate, and it was one of the Abbey Roads, and they just sound so great.
They sound good, and the thing that I really like about them is that they don't have infinite choices where it's like you have to choose between 2.6 and 2.7 ratio, and who cares? It's just they've got 6.
Either 2, 4, 6.
I have no idea what they do, and I just that one doesn't work. That one, that sounds kind of cool. Boom, neat.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Turn it up, turn it down.
Yeah.
So it's like they force you to use.
Yeah,
your
I was
ears.
surprised at the lack of selection on the Abbey Road stuff. It was like, wow. But then they're emulating that's what it was like back then. So and you worked with what you had.
And you don't necessarily know, it has 1 through 10, but what does that mean? Is that dBs? No, it's just 1 through 10. It's less and more.
A lot of ones are like that. I use on my drum buses for many years. I've used one called PSP Vintage Warmer, and it was only like a couple of years into it already using it that I went and read the manual and realized that all the knobs and stuff didn't mean what I thought it meant. So what I thought was ratio was kind of ratio, but it was something way more. And it worked
pushing the threshold
more. And it worked in a really weird way. I'm just like, okay, wow, I maybe should rethink how I'm using this thing.
Yeah. So there's some of, I do have some of the plugins that are like, I guess you would call them normal modern day plugins where they've got the graphs and the waveforms and all the little dots with the numbers and blah, 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 blah. But I use those pretty sparingly. It's like it kind of goes back to, my hope with recording is to record the sound from the get-go and not have to do too much in the mix.
Yeah.
Except take out anything that's proving to be an obstacle to getting to the final mix, or if there's an effect, if I want a cavernous reverb or something just compressed because I like that sound, then I can add that in. But with guitar sounds, a lot of the vocals, the drums, whatever, a lot of that is deciding how to record it in the first place, and
and get it sounded good there. Because it alleviates a lot of problems later on down the road that you don't have to fix. We've been going on for a few minutes and nobody's even heard what we're talking about. So I'm just going to play. A couple of seconds of the actual track here.
Okay.
There's no such thing as love, just people doing us favors, and there's no one up above, just a selfish gene and imagine.
Okay, well let's start off with the drums here, because that's what, so what I'll do is I'll need, so these guys up here, needs, there we go. So here's just the drum kit. What did you use for a kit?
For a kit or a kick?
For the whole kit.
The kit Like what kind of drums?
Hmm.
I have a CNC drum kit. I forget what model it is. It's a big kit. It's got a 24-inch kick,
Cool.
a 13-inch rack tom, 16 floor tom, and it's a 6.5 by 14 snare.
Cool. Nice and deep.
And yeah, in our room that we rehearse and record in, it's just off on the one end. It's sort of got,
And it's all recorded in your home, right?
well, in the garage. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
where my wife has put me.
You've been banished.
You can have a drum set if it's
Not
if I
inside
can't
the
hear
house.
it. Yeah. Yeah, I've got these score when the library headquarters moved to Berwick,
Yep.
which doesn't mean anything to you fans out there. But I snagged a couple of their office partitions.
Oh yeah, those are handy.
So I've got those on either side of the drums to kind of cut down from just slosh.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds like you're getting a pretty decent, like a dead sound in there. Like it sounds pretty
Mhm.
soundproof, not too tight and
Yeah,
you get
and
that
actually-
weird early reflection sometimes.
We tracked this live, right?
Yeah.
So those amps and the bass are all going with the drums, and so that's like the bleed that you hear
Oh,
from
cool.
that is like play some of that and you'll hear it. It's kind of
You can
swishy
hear
there,
a little bit of bleed,
the bass.
and it's hard to get rid of that. And
I mean, that's not bad considering that
No, it's
we're
not
playing at
bad.
stage volume.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then once you get everything in there, of course.
So what
It's
we
hard
did
to
with
hear.
that is like I don't know if can they see where the drum. Well, essentially we've got, if this is the room, the
Yeah.
drums are here on one end, and
Yeah.
what I did is instead of taking the guitars as far away from them, I actually set up these baffles right in front of the drums, with the amps right on the other side of it, facing the other
Facing
way.
the opposite way. Cool.
So, yeah. I
Well, it
was
worked out pretty decent.
pretty
There's not a lot
surprised.
of bleed.
Yeah, pretty weird.
There's not a lot of bleed. That's cool. That's hard to do. Usually you shove the drummer in a whole nother room if it's possible,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
it's okay for sonically, but I don't know. You kind of lose the
Energy.
You lose the energy. So it kind of takes the point away from kind of doing it live.
And then you can't yell at each other when somebody makes
do
a
you
mistake.
prefer to do
you know?
that live off the floor for as much as you can?
Well, it's interesting. When I can, I prefer it. I record my own stuff and I play all the instruments, so obviously I can't do it all at the same time. And I find that not always, but often enough, I'll do funny little things to make it sound more live. I'll actually put bleed in, because since I'm doing everything myself one at a time, it's like total separation, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes if I'm doing a bass track, I'll do the bass, record it live, mic the cabinet, and I'll leave the snare on,
Yeah.
just so that the bass makes that snare
Cool.
rattle,
Yeah, yeah.
and you
Get
can't
that-
really hear it, but it's there.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like the
yeah.
difference between like on this here gate over here. I've
Hmm.
got instead of completely closing things off, you can set it so that it'll dim down, so that it'll
right, yeah.
keep some of that,
Yeah,
a little bit of that bottom noise floor, just to kind of keep things a little bit more natural sounding.
right. So you're not sucking in and
Yeah,
out.
that's a cool thing with just kind of leaving the snare in
Yeah.
handy so that it gets picked up by the overdubbed bass mic. That's a cool idea.
On this, we were talking earlier how I recorded the bass. Jay was playing it live, but we recorded it using a DI.
Yeah.
So you've got some bass bleed on the drums, but his actual bass is pristine. And then he wanted that first, these parts that come in and out to be fuzz bass.
Yeah.
And so we ran. I had to think about this, how this happened. I think it was an accident. We ran the bass and reamped it for the fuzz parts. But on that track, you can hear bleed from the band, but the band wasn't playing then, so I
Yeah.
think I had the band playing through the PA while we were doing that, and I don't remember if I did that on purpose or if I was probably like listening on headphones saying, man, this sounds really good, unaware that the band was actually still coming through the PA.
Yeah, it's kind of neat having sometimes open mics or just kind of gives it a different ambience and kind of almost sometimes it really helps kind of tie all your instruments together because it can be very separated sounding, especially if you're doing complete overdubs. And
I don't like that. I like bleed.
it's both. I like the painting and or I like the portrait and the capturing. You know the it's just fun when you can sit back and create stuff, but it's really good getting that.
Part of the way we did this,
And you overdub stuff too, where you did like you've got the clean DI, and then on the same track you've got the fuzz DI.
Yeah,
so
that's
must
over
have been-
here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're different tracks, but one cuts out and the other takes over.
Yeah.
Right. So it's never the two of them
And
at
what-
once on this song.
Yeah, that's cool.
One of the things with the drum sound, I've got a kick mic, which is one of those Shure B52s.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Snare mic,
57.
a stereo mic as an overhead, and then I've got this. I picked this up off of YouTube. What's his name? Moses Schneider, I think, is his name, and he's got some videos up. Seems like a nice, lovely character, and he talks about this Wurst mic, the Wurst mic, which is German for sausage, I think.
Big sausage mic.
Yeah, and it's just a 57.
Everybody will be on eBay looking for this thing.
And it's right over the kick drum,
Okay.
equidistant between the toms facing at the snare. So it's acting as like it picks up
Overall
everything,
front end thing.
but you compress the crap out of it
Yeah.
and you drive it. So it's,
It's kind of like parallel compression almost.
yeah, but captured live. So that is a large part of the snare sound, and also it just makes the whole kit kind of sound bigger.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can hear. Was it a metal or wood snare? It sounds really woody.
It's wood. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. Sounds great. So what else have we got here? So let's bring in the bass here and see. So there's that crazy fuzz.
And then to the clean.
The back of the clean. Cool.
Take the take it back to the beginning and take the drums out, and you'll hear the bleed on the fuzz that then disappears with the clean. It's a lot of bleed.
That's crazy.
And then it goes away. Oh, there's still some there. Yeah.
Must be a little bit of bleed in through.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Neat. We got some cool guitars. I love the guitars in this. They're really, it's keeps up with the fuzz. It really helps reinforce the bottom end with the bass.
Mm.
It and very filling too. It's very spacious. So, I mean, there's of course. What do you got for effects on the guitar? Well, what's the guitar setup? Do you remember?
Derek is playing a Strat through a Fender Deluxe, and Mark is playing a Tele through a Dr. Z. And basically, both of the amps are, like I said, right in front of the drums with gobos between them. And I just put 58s on them because I used my 57s on the drums.
Cool.
So I just stuffed 58s just...
Did you go back now? Are those what we're hearing, or did you go back and overdub any of this stuff, or this is pretty much like your live tracks that you recorded? Those you kept all that stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, those are live guitars,
Cool.
definitely.
Cool.
Definitely.
Let's here. Let's throw some guitars in here. Piano too.
How much bleed are you getting on the guitar track from the drums?
A little bit. Little snare.
And so those drums are 2 feet away from the amps. So I'm not getting that much bleed, and it's also not out of phase, right, as it would be if they were on the other side of the room.
The microphones would be facing, or do you have the aperture down so that the microphones are facing?
Microphones are actually facing the drum kit. What I found is if I turn things around to where, like, I tried this before where, you know, you would think, well, turn the mics around so that they're rejecting the drum kit, and that would help. But then they were picking up the reflection from the other wall, which was out of phase, and that gave me...
And delayed.
Yeah, so it turned out to be more of a nightmare. And this is actually something...
There's very little bleed in that.
Yeah, it's... I kind of got this idea from 2 places, which one was John Paul Jones, actually. I met him, and I asked him about, you know, when they were using Headley Grange or wherever. Where was that? Mick Jagger's house, his mansion.
Oh, okay.
You know,
it's been a while since I've been there.
In my imagination, you know, they had everything stashed away in all the rooms, right, and everything far away from each other. And he said when they were doing overdubs, they would put amps in chimneys and, you know,
staircases,
all that. But when they were doing the tracks, they actually would put the bass cabinet as close to the drums as they could, because for 2 reasons. Phase was one, kept it in phase, and then also the bass would give the kick drum a note.
Yeah.
Right. The bass is actually resonating in the kick drum, and
Cool.
So yeah, I've always kind of kept that in mind of like trying to keep things close together. And then also when I did this session where I ran into this problem of the drums reflecting off the wall and back into the mic that was supposed to be rejecting the drums. And I was watching, you know, again, a YouTube video of the Beatles recording in Apple Studios when they were doing the Get Back stuff, Let It Be sessions. And you look at their setup, and they're doing exactly what I stole it from them, which the drums with baffles and their guitar amps like right in front.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just like, hey, if it works for them, I'll try it.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's proven. We did ours down here in the. Actually, I think we did a couple of pickup lines near the end, and I think through the amp just over in the corner for like 2 minutes. We needed it, but usually what I'll do is I'll take it downstairs, and I'll throw it through a couple of DI boxes. So just basically using it as a long speaker cable sort of a thing, balanced speaker cable sort of a deal. I'm miking it down there and bringing it back up here so we can hear it back into the mix and stuff.
That's the thing. Like I've done quite a few sessions, you know, as a band member where you're going and recording, and it's a nice space. They've got a, you know, the thing, you know, the musicians are there with the drums, but your amps are up in the second floor.
Yeah. That way you
closet
can
or whatever.
Your headphone mixes or
and and I hate that, because then you're like, you know, I mean, you want to hear that, and all you're hearing is.
You know, I think it could be. I think it could be too, depending on the mix. If you get a really good headphone mix, but yeah, it's challenging. But I mean, the way that you did it worked out great.
Yeah.
And that's the way ultimately it has to be. It has to be. How is everybody comfortable playing together while trying to get the best sound that they can? You know, I know there's lots of bands that'll probably sit back and just, you know, let's lay down a click track for this song, and then everybody comes in one at a time, and we see each other, we might not.
And depending on the tune, like, you might have to do it that way.
Yeah, you know, it could be tricky. It could be tricky. What else do we got in this song here? We got keys, and we got vocals.
I think another thing on the drums too, I'm looking at the sheet there where track 10, it says snare, gate, and reverb. I actually gated the snare and played it back through the PA and mic'd it just in the room. So
cool.
I don't really hear that in there, but
let me see.
It might be on the reverb.
Effects up here.
laugh it off, but it's causing such commotion in
Just the right amount of reverb on the
moments of
snare, too.
self-doubt.
Just-
He can't escape his human
you
emotion.
hear that it's kind of a big
You
room,
know,
but not this big cathedral thing, you know?
Yeah.
Do you try to do that sometimes? I'm kind of on and off about it. Depends on the project, but do you try to create a unified space where the kind of the band is sitting in, so that everybody? I mean, you kind of want sometimes try to do that to make it sound like it was done live, but you
Yeah.
guys did do it live. But sometimes
Yeah.
when you're recording, even if you did it live, it can have a very, you know, depending on the effects. I mean, that's like a little bit of a plate reverb or a room reverb
Right.
can help tie
Yeah.
everybody into the same room sonically almost. Did you? Were you
I
thinking
think
about
what
anything like that, or-
happens is because of using the Korg 16 track for everything previous to this, I'm carrying over, you know, a lot of the what are essentially limitations into the mix bus format where I don't have those limitations. But the way the Korg is, you can assign up to 8 effects to 16 tracks, right? So you have to be pretty picky about what you're putting
Yeah.
effects on. And I would say most of the time that's going to be compressors, probably. And then I have 2 what they term master effects that you can assign through aux channels,
Okay.
right? So I'm likely going to be choosing like a long reverb and a short reverb, or a bright and a dark, or you know, a delay and a reverb, and then choosing what to send through them in what amounts.
Yeah.
And rather than, you know, with the DAWs now, I mean, you could give every
track has something
has its
completely
own,
different.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just haven't gone there yet. So
It's a fun.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
and
So-
it's one of those things where you do have to kind of do. It's like when you
Right.
first discover reverb. When you listen to the first thing you put reverb on, there's like 20 pounds of fucking
Yeah.
reverb on there.
Right, exactly.
And now you're like
Compression,
using it more
yeah.
tastefully and stuff like that. Now, do you use much compression as you're recording?
It depends again on the song, but
Like, say, for your drum kit, did you do?
in this case, just looking at this, I would say there's on the kick, the snare, and the overhead. There's when I tracked it, there was probably no compression, but then this, the versed mic I was talking about, was like limited. Is what it was. It was
Cool.
crushed.
Okay, so yeah,
And
that's basically-
overdriven,
Well,
so,
I guess it's
Yeah.
it is parallel compression. Well, that's cool.
And then on the bass, if I used any compression, it was just to even things out, but it wasn't something that you would hear. And then coming back out. So like if we listen to just the reverb track on here, you're going to hear drums, the piano, the vocal. You're going to hear all different things that were put through there.
So here's our effects channel.
There's that snare.
There's our crazy snare.
That's actually sent through the PA and mic'd.
Nice.
Scary piano.
I love that piano one. That's cool.
That's
It's a
how
really neat dissonant thing too that just kind of like interrupts everything for
Yeah.
a couple of seconds, and then as it fades out, things clear up. And
Yeah, that's
there's a delay
that's
on
my
the,
skill level on the piano. Is just
break.
so yeah. The vocals and the drums are sharing the same reverb. So I guess that does
Yeah, it's,
give it the effect that it's in the same environment.
Yeah,
right?
that's cool. It's often weird sometimes when you listen to something on its own, when out of context and stuff. It's like, oh, that's different, and then you throw it in there and like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, it actually works.
One thing I do a lot with Derek, he's a singer for this band, Dayliner. He doesn't maybe because I grew up with the Beatles, like it's really easy for me to suggest let's double that vocal. You know, he doesn't like that so much. So what I do to trick him is to I'll have I'll comp his vocal take, and then either use an unused take or comp a second take.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm using to drive
Yep.
the reverb, right? So it's a different vocal,
Oh, okay.
but you don't actually hear the vocal, you just hear the reverb.
Now, I've done that with straight out without just taking a layer, because I'll do all my stuff in layers, so all the good ones are comped up front, and then I might take like a second and throw it down there and use that as maybe just as a bit of a doubler kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Then have
Yeah.
thankfully with DAWs you can almost edit it so there's word for word if you have that amount of weed and time.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you just overrate to the effects.
Right, and so the actual main vocal that you hear is entirely dry, and the reverb that you think is that vocal is actually from a different take.
It's coming from a different take.
Yeah,
That
and
is very cool.
So it changes, right? Because some of the notes are longer, some are shorter.
And it kind of gives it this really cool pre-delay thing. It's
kind of, yeah, and sometimes he sings different notes,
Exactly.
right? And so then you get the reverb doing one thing when the vocal's doing another. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool.
Mhm.
What else do we got here? Well, let's do you want to? I'll just play it here for a second. If you want to even just kind of bring up a little mix that sounds good to you.
There's no such thing as love, just people doing us
Did
favors.
you guys mix this with the whole band, or did you do the mixing and say, guys, combine, have a listen,
Just a selfish gene
yeah.
and
it could be kind
imagination.
of a blessing and a curse sometimes if you're got a whole room full of guys. Sometimes it might be.
I don't find that mixing by committee doesn't work, and kind of figured that out, being in bands and going, and you're paying for studio time, and everybody's sitting around doing bong hits. And, turn that up, turn that down, turn that up, and then the next time you run through it, they've got completely different suggestions. And it's just like, I would say, just let the engineer mix it, and then tell him what you like or you don't like, and then come back to it. I know if if Derek was mixing it, is that the right button? It would sound like this, right? Or he would mix it like this, and then all of a sudden it would be.
There's no such thing as love, just people doing
And then if the bass player, you get the idea. So it would just be, this would be the bass player's mix of, this is, and then if I was,
Now see, if that was me, it would be this.
right, yeah, it'd be
Bass
Jaman.
and drums.
It would be the dub version.
Yeah. Cool. How long did it take you to do the whole thing, start to finish? Did you do any pre-production for it? I mean, you wrote the songs.
This CD was interesting for us because the first CD that we did took a long time because there was sort of a break in the middle of it. So we would sort of recorded half of it, and then I don't know how many. It was like 3 or 4 months that we weren't even playing, and then we came back and recorded the other half of it.
Cool.
The second CD, we recorded most of it in like January of whatever year that was, and then we kind of, we were done with that, and we realized we need some like fast songs. So basically, Derek wrote and we recorded these three songs that we basically, like the one, I think we played it just for the recording, and I don't know if we've even played it live, maybe once. Yeah, so for this CD, what I wanted, like my premise, I don't know if I shared it with the band even, but
Exclusive.
yeah, what I was thinking was let's write all the songs and and play them first rather than record them first and then learn them
That's
and then
always the way.
right. So we actually, I'd say most of these tunes I think we had them for like, we were working on them and writing them and arranging them and playing them. And as I would get the songs, I was actually organizing the set. It was a set and the album. So we'd been playing the songs
Already for a
in
while.
the order that they ended up being on the album
cool.
for months.
Nice.
Like
That's
8,
neat.
9 months, something like that, I think.
It's usually the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of writing that goes on in the
Yeah.
studio too. You can find like new parts or different arrangements or things like that. So
Yeah.
that happens a lot where you'll record, and then you have to kind of learn the songs to play them live.
Right.
And
Or
they
you're
always
doing
seem
that
to get
thing
better
of-
too, because you're like, fuck, I wish we would have recorded
Exactly.
that 6 months
Yeah.
later because it's so matured now.
or doing the thing of which is what I do with my own stuff, where you write a song and you do the drum tracks and the bass track and the thing and you do it, and then you do the mix,
Yeah.
and then you start the next song, and so it's like this sort of one at a time from zero to completion. And with this one, we did 3 sessions, pretty much. I think it was like 2 days in a row, and then 1 day the next week. We recorded like 3 or 4 of the songs that I needed mics on the toms, and then three tunes that just needed overheads, because I only had 5 mics for
Okay.
the drums that I could 5 inputs,
Yeah.
right? So I had to sort of decide how I was gonna utilize. I had kick and snare, and then whether I was going to have overhead and this Vorst mic or 2 tom mics and a Vorst, and then there was one, I think we did the last session where I had kick and snare, and then under the snare and 2 overheads.
Cool. All kinds of different. Cool.
So yeah, this one we recorded it all in one fell swoop, and then I would say it probably took a couple months for me to go through and do the overdubs.
Countless hours.
I'll say this: anyone who's listening to this album, Dayliner 3, available at wherever you get your music from. Derek cut all the vocals for the entire album in one night.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
all of them. He came by and did all the vocals in one night,
That's
which I
crazy.
think is
And then 2 weeks of
insane.
editing later on.
Yeah, well, I think I usually make him
That's
do
cool. That's a
3
lot of work.
3 keeper takes.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go through
Yeah.
10.
You don't do like
No.
a dozen tracks kind of a thing.
God, no. And I'm pretty brutal with that kind of thing. Like, I'll take those 3 tracks and I'll make my master comp, and then I delete them right away. Like, so if Derek comes in and is like, "Oh man,
like
can
that
I
other
hear that
tape."
other one?" It's like, sorry, it's gone.
We've made a commitment.
Yeah. And I think too that kind of goes back to having learned to do it with tape, where I know the digital is non-destructive editing, but I'm kind of into destructive editing. Like,
Well, I
make
don't,
your decision.
Yeah,
and
having
that's
to
it.
make some commitments.
Yeah.
It's being able to sit here for hours and hours, going on is A, B, or C better than I just got B. That's it. That's all we got to go with. So
Yeah.
something to
And
be
so
said
much of
about
that
it.
stuff is arbitrary. It's like, if you're listening to you're working on a guitar solo, and it's like, oh, I can do it better, and you keep doing it and keep doing it. And then you got 20 to choose from, and then you're going to stitch them together. But the choices that you make tonight in this frame of mind is going to be completely different from the choices you make tomorrow morning, after a cup of coffee,
Mhm.
right? So it's all, and that's the same with mixing. It's like, here's the mix that I did at 4 o'clock today. Tomorrow's mix is going to be completely different. So it's not for me, it's not really a matter of, like, I don't believe there is an absolute mix there. It's just the one that you do it's the last one.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I find
Here's the
myself
mix,
mixing
you know?
fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that rabbit hole, and it's just like, this is I've already heard it thousands of times.
Right.
I know how it sounds in my head already. All I got to do is, and by the time I get ready to mix, I'm pretty much close to mixing.
Right.
At least 60-70% already. But
Right.
you're working through it as you go and all that stuff.
And that's the thing, like you asked, like, are the guys there for the mix? And they really can't be, because it doesn't happen that way. It's not like I track and then we are doing the mix now. It's like I'm working on the mix all the
Constantly.
time.
Yeah.
Over, every time I listen to it, I'm changing something.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to doing the final mix, it's more a matter of
Just getting that last 20% together and.
yeah, and just trying to identify, like, put the CD in the truck and try to, wow, that's really harsh and brittle, or there's too much bass or not enough bass,
Mm-hmm.
or it's kind of more general things like that, which I guess are even more like issues with the mastering, right?
That's a tricky bit.
However some people send their mixes away to get mastered, and for me, it's kind of a muddy blur of where the mixing ends and the mastering begins.
There's wizardry there for sure. But I mean, if you can find somebody to master stuff, I never master my own stuff. I never do.
Yeah.
I try to keep some distance, and it's just like, okay, I'm probably fatigued in many ways from working on this thing, and I want to get a fresh set of ears, and I always talk to the mastering guy too before, so that when I'm mixing, I know, we talked about, it's like, okay, here's what I'm using, here's what I'm doing. He's already heard it. It's like, okay, well, be careful of this, or you can leave this in, because I can
Right.
take it out better than you would be able to, sort of a thing. So it's always good to have that conversation.
And you send them like your mix,
I
like a
just send
rough.
them,
this is what I'm after. Yeah.
Just a 2-track master is just a WAV file, and they do magic. They can pull vocals in and out, guitars in and out, just from a stereo mix, from just running it through nice quality, good EQ that costs probably more than this entire building, for a beautiful stereo EQ or some compression and stuff.
Yeah,
So.
I'm doing it myself, but I do find that it's worth. You do your mix and you get your final mix and you're happy with it, and before you go to that last stage, don't listen to it for if you can do it 2 or 3 weeks even, so that you can get some objectivity.
Never mix on the same day that you're tracking. Oh my goodness.
No.
I've gotten a lot of folks asking to come in here to record, and they're like, "Oh, I want to do 10 songs, 4 hours. Whip off the songs and mix them." It's like, oh, well, let's mix the next day, because it's just like, I would hate to be listening to it in the car and going, "Oh man, there's an overhead missing," or there's something, something we could have fixed with fresh ears.
Yeah, my favorite thing is when you're sitting there and you're like working on, you're EQing something and you're just intent or dialing in a reverb or something.
Channel.
And after 10 minutes you look up and you realize that channel's not the one that you're even
that
changing.
all the time.
And it's like, and that's the psychoacoustics of it, right? So
Well, that's that whole thing too, where you get musicians who are like, "I need a little bit more of me in the headphones. There you go, perfect. Oh, it sounds great."
Yeah.
You always got to keep that blank fader, or if you ever broken one,
right,
kicking around.
yeah,
the
the
one
broken knob that you
How's
turn
that
up.
now?
Yeah,
Just
that's
like,
great.
yeah,
Love it.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so I do. I find that I'll do all that kind of I'll do all my editing and tweak the mixes, whatever, do that kind of fun stuff. But when I'm actually going to do final mixes or mastering, it is kind of a thing where I'll wake up fresh, have some coffee, take the shower, whatever, and come in having not really
Nobody bother you.
Yeah, and my ears
Interruptions,
are fresh,
ears,
and my brain is maybe functioning, and yeah.
Do you mix at what kind of levels do you mix at? Kind of like nominal 69, 70 dB. Everything, nothing too crazy loud.
All of the above. Sometimes I was just talking to my friend Andy. Andy Baumer, who does sound up at Union Street.
Okay.
And we were talking about,
Great spot.
I can't imagine Andy Johns sitting there with little speakers and, mixing at near field volume. I know those guys had, I've seen pictures of them, or they'll have, 6 foot tall, 4 of them in a row in front of him, and you know that it's like probably
Pounded.
nauseatingly loud. And that's how they used to mix.
It's kind of like our basement up on the hill with the power line system in the basement.
Yeah, just so. And then on the other hand, I had a friend of mine back in Portland who was an engineer, studio engineer, and she said that one of the things that they would do is, you get your final mix together or whatever, and then you listen to it at the lowest, like you can't even hear it. All you can hear are the tops of the hi-hats and, like
and see if
the
you
vocal.
can still hear everything.
Yeah.
Another one too is a good one to use is to bring it up to nothing too crazy loud, but and then go into another room.
Yes.
And see if you can still
into the
hear
kitchen.
everything
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And just kind of get a sense for, right? And which makes total sense because how many people listening to it are going to be sitting, 4 feet away from two perfectly
perfectly
placed,
centered.
Yeah.
It's like, I got
Nobody.
my speakers over
Right.
the sink while I
Yeah.
do dishes, perfectly placed,
And
sub underneath by
yeah.
the dishwasher.
And that's the hardest thing really to remember when we're doing this stuff is that nobody else is going to be, they're not going to
Nobody
be,
else has
oh man, that
mixers and
tambourine
speakers.
has too much 4K
Yeah.
in it. Like nobody's going to do that except you. So a lot of, I think the biggest challenge for me is not to get too deep in there and like tweaking because I'm fully capable of doing that and just driving yourself, over the edge.
Insane. Be there for a long time mixing. You can add
Yeah.
extra lot of time just messing about with stuff.
Yeah. So when you do, you just kind of set everything up and you get everything and you do all your tweaking, your editing, and all that sort of busy work crap that we were talking about having the trained monkey for. And then put it aside, go to sleep, and wake up the next morning and just hit play and then just go boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it's nice when, I haven't been in here for a little while, so it took us a little bit to get set up. But when we were doing Jeff's record, I had this already set up at a house in Middleton. And so the setup time was really, really quick to get everything up here. And through the entire process, we had, I think, a tube DI shit the bed on us. But other than that, everything worked great. And you never even thought about this stuff. It was just, you'd hit a button and you go, and you kind of would just, if you set something here at zero here, you knew it was going to be the same, calibrated everywhere. You didn't have to kind of mess about and gawk at everything. You could just bring stuff up and kind of walk away sometimes. So it's nice when you can get that sort of transparency, I find, and you can really just work on the music, and you can start to listen instead of thinking about all the technical numbers and, is this peaking and is this doing this over here and all that stuff.
When I do my own stuff, it's, it's...
Well, I guess we're gonna have you back again, I think.
Oh, cool.
To do, if you don't mind, to do some of your own stuff, because there's some really cool recordings in there.
There's
all done on the 16-track hard disc.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I figure, Dark Side of the Moon was done on 16 tracks. So
well, yeah.
Why can't I?
Did you see I posted a funny picture of George Martin sitting beside the old mixer with the levers, and it said, did more with 4 tracks than most do today with Pro Tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true.
Do you think you'll do your next one? How are you going to do your next recording, whether it be Dayliner or for yourself? Think it's going to be all in the box?
I'm just about done, actually. I've got one more song to do before my next one, and I'm doing it pretty much the same way. I'm tracking it all. I'm filling the 16 tracks.
Yeah.
And I have the option of doing the mix in the 16 track and then sending the final mix up to Harrison to master it, or throwing the tracks up and doing the mix and the mastering in Mixbus. And I think for this I'll probably throw, because I want to play with my toys. I want to,
Nice.
And it's kind of cool though too, because I know the Korg so well that if I get lost with the plugins and it's just, if it's not coming together, I can always come back to that and try to get a mix together.
Back to your roots.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything, dude. Let's freaking thanks for coming in, man.
Sure,
It's
man.
been a great insight on this
Fun.
song. I know it's been listening to it since you guys put it out, so it's cool to get into this and tear it apart and hear how stuff is done, and hopefully it'll inspire maybe some other people who are doing recording at home as well. You know, pick up some of these cool tips that you heard today, and who knows, it might help your recording. So I think what we'll do is we'll go out, let's play a little tune here, bring up a mix.
More drums.
There's no such thing as love, just people doing us favors, and there's no one up above, just a selfish gene and imagination.
Phil Spector.